Urgent. Lukashenko has secretly pledged allegiance to Washington. Trump signed a pact to save Batka behind the Kremlin's back. Moscow is in agony while they pack their bags in Minsk. The start of a massive betrayal. Batka is already flying to Washington to sign the document. Shock, the Black Sea trap. Erdogan and Zelensky are wiping the Russian Federation off the map. A geopolitical explosion from Istanbul has cut off the Kremlin's last drops of oxygen. A Turkish scimitar in Putin's back. Ankara and Kyiv have created a steel alliance that dictates the rules of the game. Putin is losing everything on live television. Ukraine has cleared the skies. Fedorov's drone swarm turned Shakheds into ashes in seconds. This is the end of the Russian Federation's drone era. Fedorov pulled a joker from his sleeve that has left the occupiers in a state of terror. The Japanese dragon is burning the Russian Federation in the east. Tokyo has bared its blades. A death sentence has been passed on Putin in Asia. The Kuril Islands are returning home. Putin's nightmare has become a reality. More on all of this later in our hotspot broadcast. Urgent. Putin is knocked out. Lukashenko has secretly defected to the United States. Moscow is in shock while Batka signs a major deal with Trump. The start of something shocking. The self-proclaimed president of Belarus has started his own game and has already reached an agreement with Washington. Lukashenko is preparing a backup airfield at the White House. An outcry has erupted in the Kremlin after hearing this. The first details are coming up. The curtain has been lifted. Allies Minsk and Moscow no longer appear monolithic. Cracks are appearing in their relationship. Quiet but telling. Economic bargaining over oil and gas. Attempts by Belarus to act more independently. Cautious contacts with the West and their own diplomatic channels.
Horror. Well, horror. But not horror.
Lukashenko increasingly speaks the language of balance rather than total dependence. And right now it seems like some real action is starting, though Putin obviously won't like it. In Minsk, the distance from Moscow is growing. And now not just in rhetoric, but in practical steps. Inside the country, feelings of fatigue from dependence and the search for their own political balance are intensifying.
I'm more surprised, thinking, how do you know?
Or did I let it slip somewhere?
The regional balance is starting to waver. Belarus is trying to leave more room for an independent game. But to be honest, Lukashenko is taking his first steps while looking over his shoulder.
Well, first of all, I'm a historian. You know, I'm a historian. I am a historian, after all.
Now Kiev is going all in and helping to launch an irreversible process that could oust the self-proclaimed leader Alexander Lukashenko.
It is truly important for us to maintain relations with representatives of a democratic Belarus. We believe that the time will come when Belarus, a democratic Belarus, will become the fourth member of the Lublin Triangle.
Ukraine is effectively investing in a different Belarus, not in the regime, but in an alternative. A new and most importantly legitimate president of Belarus has already been elected with Kyiv's assistance. Volodymyr Zelensky shook hands, and the whole world held its breath. Moreover, behind closed doors, they are already openly discussing the possibility of opening a criminal case against Lukashenko. And this adds even more tension to the situation. Every new signal from behind the scenes only reinforces the feeling that political pressure on Minsk is entering a new, much tougher phase.
With the assistance of the Belarusian opposition, Ukraine may begin the procedure for placing Lukashenko on the international wanted list.
Political pleasantries are over. Kyiv's patience has finally run out. The president of Ukraine publicly and bluntly criticized Lukashenko right on live television. Zelensky's sharp, emotional statement disrupted the status quo and put everyone on edge.
For now, Lukashenko's white spitz has been left with more rights than the people of Belarus, unfortunately. In 2020, there was a chance to change this, and I'm sure there will be another chance. But back then, there simply wasn't enough support for the Belarusians. And now, we all feel how much harder, how much costlier, and how much more dangerous it's become for everyone because of Belarus's dependence on Moscow, which hasn't diminished.
And this is not the end of the great game. At this very moment, Ukraine and the West are forming an alternative political track for Minsk. The US president is making his move as external players add new layers of influence. And now, the main player enters the scene. Donald Trump is also trying to pull Alexander Lukashenko out of the Kremlin's embrace. Direct contacts with the White House and the first serious agreements. The US is easing sanctions on key Belarusian entities, the financial sector and Belaruskali, opening the door to a cautious thaw. In response, Lukashenko takes a bold step, a mass release of political prisoners. And this isn't the first such exchange. A similar scenario played out at the end of 2025, when an amnesty by Minsk was also accompanied by a partial lifting of sanctions. And now for the most interesting part. Washington is no longer ruling out that Lukashenko could end up in a direct meeting with Trump. and not just somewhere formal, but at the White House or even Mar-a-Lago. Nevertheless, it's too early for the mustachioed Belarusian to celebrate.
Lukashenko doesn't have many options right now. Washington is opening its arms only to stifle him. He'll have to pay for this with his loyalty.
Analysts warn that this is a strategic trump card that could make Minsk financially dependent on Washington's decisions. In other words, the White House could gain leverage where Moscow and Beijing once held exclusive sway. Note that China is the primary geopolitical rival of the United States. So what is actually happening? Washington is playing a subtle and risky game, trying to weaken Russia's position in Europe, push China out of the key allies circle, and reshape the region's political map. It seems a major turning point is approaching. However, things are going poorly for Minsk, so Lukashenko is now effectively forced to balance between Moscow and Washington. And this game is looking increasingly nervous. The Kremlin, seemingly sensing something is wrong, is tightening its control even further. The military presence and rumors of strategic assets being deployed near Minsk only heighten the tension. Among Lukashenko's inner circle, there's a sense that the system is overheated and could crack at any moment. And right away, new major information emerges. Putin, it seems, is again trying to act through Lukashenko. Belarus Tomorrow reports that Belarus could once again become a staging ground for a potential strike on Kyiv. In the Kremlin, according to this data, the decision is already effectively made and Lukashenko increasingly looks like a restricted player in someone else's game. Will Batka finally have the strength to break the chains and make a final choice? Time will tell. It happened. Checkmate from Turkey. Zelensky and Erdogan have signed the Russian Federation's sentence. Turkey and Ukraine are cutting off Moscow's oxygen as of today. A geopolitical explosion from Istanbul. Ankara and Kyiv have officially united. Turkey is raising the stakes to the sky. Gas, drones, and total control over the sea. Putin is losing everything. Watch for the details. A diplomatic blow to the Kremlin straight from Istanbul. Erdogan and Zelensky are launching a new game. Turkey isn't just supporting Ukraine, it's establishing itself as a key player in the fight for security, stability, and the region's future. The Turkish president stated this at a meeting with the Ukrainian leader in Istanbul.
Turkey's support for negotiations between Ukraine and Russia will continue. The region needs more peace and stability.
What did Ukraine actually gain from this meeting? The most tangible result is the confirmation of new steps in security cooperation. These aren't just statements, it's the start of deep defense integration. Bankova is effectively opening a new level, joint projects, enhanced security, and technological exchange. Ukraine is no longer in the role of a petitioner. It emerges as an equal player with unique combat experience. Zelensky emphasized that Ukraine is ready to support Turkey with what it has gained over the years of war: expertise, technology, and experience.
There is a fundamental political readiness to work together, and our teams will finalize the details in the coming days.
The Black Sea is on the agenda. The region is turning into an epicenter of tension. The security of shipping and energy hangs by a thread. Incidents with sea drones are already hitting key routes. For Turkey, these aren't just risks. It's a blow to the economy and geopolitical weight. That's why Erdogan, in a conversation with Putin, specifically spoke about the inadmissibility of attacks on civilian ships in the Black Sea.
Attacks on civilian vessels in the Black Sea waters undermine regional stability and create additional risks for shipping safety.
This shows that the Black Sea narrative for Ankara isn't just a Ukrainian issue, but part of its own security logic. Turkey wants to remain the country through which the region's key maritime, trade, and energy nerve passes. Accordingly, any escalation at sea immediately hits its interests as well. For Ukraine, this creates an important point of converging interests. Kyiv can argue that without Ukrainian resilience, there's no predictable Black Sea, and without that, there's no stable Turkish logistics, secure energy, or normal regional routes. Turkey is ready to boost trade with Ukraine and is already supporting the expansion of Kyiv's ties with the Persian Gulf. This is a signal Ukraine is fitting into a broader architecture of regional influence.
During the meeting, the Turkish president also expressed satisfaction with Ukraine's efforts to develop relations with the Gulf states. Moreover, the presidents of Ukraine and Turkey agreed in Istanbul on new steps for security cooperation.
We discussed bilateral relations between our countries, the situation in Europe, and the Middle East. It is important that joint and coordinated actions strengthen the protection of life and provide more security for people in every part of the world.
The second block is economic and energy. The presidents discussed practical steps for implementing joint projects in gas infrastructure construction, as well as the possibility of joint development of gas fields. This means that the energy track did not remain at the level of a political declaration, but was immediately moved into a practical plane. Also, the president of Ukraine thanked Erdogan and the people of Turkey for their consistent support for the independence and territorial integrity of Ukraine.
We value the close interaction throughout all these years. which allows us to work on truly serious projects that can strengthen the entire region.
The third block of results is the negotiation one. Erdogan assured that Turkey is ready to play an important role in achieving a lasting peace for Ukraine and supports the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. The president of Turkey confirmed that his country is ready to host the next round of negotiations for the delegations of Ukraine, the United States, and Russia. This is a very important detail because it moves Turkey from the position of an abstract potential mediator to the position of a specific platform that is already preparing itself for the next political cycle of contacts. Ukraine is no longer just asking for help, it is selling security experience. The most interesting thing in this story is the change in Kyiv's positioning. At the meeting with Erdogan, Zelensky spoke not as a leader of a defending country, but as a representative of a country that can export security competence. This completely coincides with what Kyiv was doing in the previous Middle East tour. Following the trips to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and Jordan, Bankova reported on agreements in the fields of defense, security, and energy, and with Qatar, a 10-year intergovernmental agreement on cooperation in the defense sphere. Ukraine, according to Zelensky, promotes abroad not only products but also knowledge, military skills, and practical experience gained in the war against Russia. Strategy without illusions. The Turkish vector is part of a major transformation. Ukraine is turning its traumatic military reality into an instrument of influence, from defense to security export. This is where Kyiv's new geopolitical role is born. The Syrian puzzle has also come together. The visit to Syria after Istanbul is not a coincidence. Turkey is nearby, coordination is strengthening, and the regional game is becoming multi-layered. Kyiv is clearly expanding its front of influence. The context we need within the framework of this message. First, the visit to Syria takes place after the Ukrainian delegation's stay in Istanbul. Second, Turkey and Syria are not victim countries of Iranian Shakhed blackmail. Third, during the visit to Syria, Ukraine was accompanied by a Turkish foreign ministry delegation led by Turkish Minister Fidan. Syrian media are highlighting statements by Sabiha and Zelensky on the great importance of coordination between Syria and Turkey in security and logistics. It seems that official Kyiv is breaking Putin's game.
We are building new relationships, opening up new opportunities, and expanding cooperation in the interests of security. We managed to discuss everything, from security and defense issues and the regional situation due to events around Iran, to energy and infrastructure cooperation between our countries.
And this is not just a visit, but a geopolitical breakthrough. Following the meeting, Volodymyr Zelensky announced agreements to work together to provide more security and development opportunities for both societies.
We discussed the situation in the region and the prospects for changing it for the better. We also discussed the circumstances of Russia's war against Ukraine. I am grateful for the support. There is great interest in exchanging military experience and expertise in the field of security.
Official Kyiv is acting decisively. According to Zelensky, they discussed not only the war, but also Ukraine's strategic role as a food giant. This is about the food security of the entire region.
We perfectly understand the energy and infrastructure challenges that Syria is currently facing. We are ready to work together so that the capabilities of our states and peoples increase. We spoke in detail about how to overcome the consequences of the war and about the negotiation process regarding Russia's war against our state and people.
The only mystery remains whether Ukraine itself insisted on the visit to Syria, intentions of which had already been voiced by Ukraine, or if the visit to Syria is to some extent an unwritten confirmation of the cooperation agreement with Turkey as a Turkish requirement. Ukraine is more appropriate in the Black Sea region than Russia's aggressive dominance. The alliance between Ukraine and Turkey is becoming increasingly systematic and pragmatic, displacing the Russian world from global geopolitics. Slaughter in the sky. Ukraine has neutralized the Russian air fleet. Fedorov pulled an unexpected joker out of his sleeve. The enemy looks at the sky in terror. An end to the Shakhed issue. Fedorov's secret weapon, how Ukraine outplayed everyone, quick solutions, and a swarm of drones. Ukraine has become a leader in the technological race, leaving Russia far behind. Details in the report. Ukraine is setting new rules of war. And this is no longer a forecast, but a fact. In March 2026 alone,